Coming on to camera 3.
President Kennedy once said, "A nation that is afraid to let its people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people." I'm a journalist covering the big news from coast to coast and around the world. I have a devotion to facts that borderlines on obsessive. I keep people honest. There's nothing wrong with people
Anthony,
disagreeing.
stand by.
It's a complicated situation.
That was right in the dead center of a gun-free zone.
When you get more into it, then it's really understandable.
I'm 100% against DOMA.
Besides,
please clear the
that's what
set.
makes America, America. We have to get back to it again.
2.
Thanks so much for sticking around with us. I'm Anthony Hill. It's 10:30 here on the East Coast, 7:30 for our viewers out west, and we're covering the big news from coast to coast and around the world. On the rundown, first came the trembling that was the Japanese earthquake, then a tsunami, now scares of a nuclear meltdown.
We have 104 nuclear power plants in this country alone. In California, the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant sits right on top of the Hosgri Fault. So the question is, are we using enough preventative measures to protect ourselves from a nuclear meltdown? And the United States has decided to militarily involve itself with the conflict in Libya. But should we be involved? Some people say we have no business there, while others say, as a world power, we have the responsibility of helping the oppressed. Plus, should children of illegal immigrants be considered American citizens and enjoy all the rights that come along with that? Some lawmakers in Arizona say no.
Beginning today, for the first time, individuals in 5 states and the District of Columbia will be able to check their own employment eligibility status before seeking a job.
That and more. The weekly rundown starts right now.
But we begin with the crisis in Japan. These past 2 weeks have been a struggle for the people of Japan, with a domino effect that makes efforts to recover that much harder. As I said before, Japan experienced a deadly earthquake that was then followed by a massive tsunami. And now they're dealing with a possible meltdown of one of their nuclear power plants. That's a big deal. We're covering all sides of this story with discussions right here out of the Our Roker 76 television studio. With that said, let's go back to the very beginning when the earthquake struck. WTOP's Jeremy Mensch is standing by, and he kicks off our expansive coverage. Jeremy, good evening.
Thank you, Anthony. As you stated before, Japan has been hard struck with disaster this whole month of March, and it seems to be getting worse. When the earthquake and the tsunami hit Japan in the beginning of March, the death toll was roughly around 3,000 people. However, the death toll has risen to about 9,000 now, and the domestic media is expecting the actual death toll to be about 18,000 people who have died or are unaccounted for. The damage expenses from the earthquake and the tsunami are expected to be more than $100 million. And that's all. Back to you, Anthony.
All right, thanks a lot, Jeremy. Now let's take a deeper look into the nation that is Japan, horribly affected by this disaster. Joining me now to talk about this is WTOP meteorologist and journalist Dan Peruzzi. Thanks, Dan, for joining me.
All right, thanks a lot for having me, Anthony.
Let's get right to it. Japan is not shy by any stretch of the imagination to earthquakes or tsunamis. What makes this tsunami and earthquake so significant, though?
Well, I think it's funny that you use the word shy there because it's something they're certainly used to. Japan itself, topographically, is in an area that's affected by natural disasters a lot. They're on a fault zone, so they're used to experiencing earthquakes, not as used to experiencing tsunamis. But the strength of the earthquake that hit was a 9.0 on the Richter scale. It's the 4th largest that's ever been recorded, and that's hard for any nation to even the well-developed ones like Japan. Any nation is going to have a hard time coping with that kind of an earthquake.
In your opinion, do you believe that Japan was well equipped to handle a quake of this magnitude? Obviously, they have building codes for quakes of a smaller magnitude, but this topped over a 9.0 magnitude. Were they able to handle this? Were they well equipped?
It's difficult for any nation to be well equipped for a 9.0 magnitude earthquake. It's just so incredibly strong. But in terms of any nation withstanding this kind of an earthquake, Japan did about as well of a job as any industrialized nation is going to do in the world today. Their biggest problem was the tsunami. The height upon which the tsunami wave reached was just something that no nation, no matter what you do, can prepare for. And that's what caused most of the damage. It wasn't so much the earthquake as much as it was the tsunami.
How hard is it going to be for the average person who virtually lost everything to kind of pick up the pieces again and get back on their feet?
It's going to be about as difficult as anything can be. I mean, if there's a disaster in like a hometown, of a fire, and a family loses all their stuff, there's other buildings around, there's other people around that can help them. There are entire, cities basically that are non-existent now. Entire groups of people, almost cultures, not really cultures, but entire, large populaces of people that don't have anywhere to go. It's about as difficult of a thing for a nation to cope with.
Dan Perusian for us. Thanks so much for your time, Dan.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.
Japan is not only trying to recover from that deadly earthquake and now tsunami, but a possible meltdown of the nuclear power plant, the Fukushima. What is a meltdown? Well, a meltdown occurs when the nuclear fuel rods cannot be cooled. The nuclear core literally just melts. To put this in perspective, the worst case scenario from this problem would be if the fuel actually spills out of the containment unit and releases the radioactivity throughout the water and air. The government has ordered the immediate evacuation of 200,000 people living in a 12-mile radius of the plant. With that said, scares of nuclear meltdowns are not new, and they've happened before. Let's take a trip down memory lane, if you will, with Jennifer Arceta. And Jennifer, it seems like whenever the topic of nuclear power plants is not in the news, people simply forget about Chernobyl and 3 Mile Islands.
Well, Anthony, with the nuclear crisis going on in Fukushima, a lot of people are forgetting what happened in the 3 Mile Island, especially in Chernobyl. The meltdown in Chernobyl happened back on April 26, 1986, which is in present-day Ukraine. And there are still high levels of radiation that surrounds the area, and it has made the area uninhabitable. Also, due to the meltdown, there was also an increase in thyroid cancer across Europe that impacted many people. The other meltdown occurred in March 1979 at the 3 Mile Island in Middletown, Pennsylvania. The area is surrounded by 800,000 homes. However, at the time, there was no plan of evacuating its residents, but luckily, there were no deaths or health effects in this area.
All right, Jennifer Arceta, and for us taking us down a trip on memory lane. Thanks a lot for that. There are currently 104 nuclear power plants in the United States. Some are what some would say dangerously close to large cities. For example, the Indian Point power plant is only 35 miles north of New York City. The Limerick power plant is just northwest of Philadelphia. And California's Diablo Canyon power plant actually sits right on top of the Hosgri Fault. So the questions are nuclear power plants safe or not? Are we at risk? And talking about risk, are we taking enough preventative measures to protect ourselves from a nuclear meltdown? Joining me now is WTOP's Andrew Metz, anchor of WTOP 10 News Tonight, Asa Stackel, and WTOP's Chris Lawan. Thank you guys for joining me. Do you believe that we are safe?
I'll take this. I think we are safe. And but that being said, this meltdown, well, almost meltdown in Japan has brought it to light. So, I mean, Obama and the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission are looking over our facilities and seeing if they are safe.
Do you think there's enough preventative measures, though?
I think so, especially when you look out at the Diablo Canyon plant back when it was built in the 60s and the 70s. They knew that they were building it right on top of a fault line, and they took preventative measures to do things, to safeguard it against the flood.
A lot of people would pose the question, why would you build a nuclear power plant on a fault line, though?
I think that's something that needs to be looked at, especially with the Indian Head power plant right near New York City. That's built on a fault line that hasn't been active for years. But with it, you have to know to educate the people around the plant of measures that if the worst case scenario were to happen, to know where to go and how to deal with that. But overall,
that's a great question, though. I mean, you have the Indian Point power plant that's 35 miles north of New York. How do you evacuate 8 million people out of New York City?
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do. But I know here in Oswego we have that calendar they send out
just
each
6.
year.
Yeah.
And it gives instructions, and there's a bell that sounds.
Yeah.
But I don't know too much about the Indian.
And I've actually heard that bell too, and I didn't know what it was until now. All right, thank you guys a lot. Up next on the rundown, U.S. involvement in Libya. Should the United States get involved? That's the question. It made the rundown discussion. And President Obama is in Latin America. But why? Plus, remember that whole Arizona immigration controversy that took place last year? Well, the Arizona Senate shot down a proposal that would strip citizenship to children of illegal immigrants. That definitely made the rundown discussion. That and more, this is the Weekly Rundown, only on WTOP 10. Pick a side. The United States has decided to militarily involve itself with the conflict in Libya. They're calling it Operation Odyssey Dawn. Do you agree or disagree? Next. All right, welcome back. We have breaking news out of Yemen involving violence. Let's go straight to WTOP's Chris Lawan.
Well, Anthony, even with President Ali Abdullah Saleh saying that he will step down by year's end, opposition leaders in Yemen are still unsatisfied. The opposition has called for the immediate removal of Saleh from power after protests broke out in the nation. Members of the military have even shown support for backing the opposition. The protesters' anger has grown since over 40 demonstrators were shot and killed last Friday by security forces. And the Obama administration has been alarmed and have spoken out against what Saleh is doing to deal with the protesters, saying that Saleh should form open discussions with the opposition. And Anthony, it's going to be interesting to see how over the next few days the protesters will respond to Saleh not fully meeting their demands.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris Lawan. Again, some of that information just coming into our WTOP newsroom. Anyway, the United Nations Security Council has issued a no-fly zone over Libya. The international community has come together to denounce Muammar Gaddafi's military attacks on his own people. If you remember, a lot of people took to the streets, inspired by Egypt, calling for Gaddafi to step down. We reported on this on our last broadcast that Gaddafi said he would, quote, die a martyr before even stepping down. According to a poll by CNN.com, 70% of Americans are in support of a no-fly zone. And now the United Nations has authorized military action amongst the global community against Libya. The U.S. is calling it Operation Odyssey Dawn. France is the leading country in this whole operation. However, the United States, Great Britain, and Canada are a few of the many countries partaking in military action against Gaddafi's forces. The U.S. is providing aerial refueling, 2 nuclear subs, fighter jets, and intelligence. But some say the U.S. has no business in Libya, and others say we have a responsibility as a world power to help the oppressed. What do you think? Joining me now is host of WNYO's Don't Mention It, Jeremy Mensch, producer of WTOP's College Nation, Pablo Mendoza, and WTOP's Andrew Metz. Again, what do you guys think of it? Like I said, some people said we're a world power, we are strong, and we have a responsibility to help the people who can't help themselves. And then you have other people who say we're already involved in other conflicts in the Middle East. We need to mind our business. Where do you kind of draw the line?
I would definitely go with the first thing you said. We're trying to keep the peace globally. I mean, we've done this in the past. Ever since World War II, starting with Korea, there's been a lot of problems that happened in other countries. And then the United States eventually, because we are a global power trying to keep the peace around the world, technically acting like the United Nations, but we have a responsibility. Since the Korean War, we've come in, we've tried to do what we can to try to help other countries. Same thing like for Hopes for Haiti. We've been just trying to help out globally. Same thing in Libya.
Exactly. The U.S. didn't ask to be a world superpower. We just ended up like that, and now we're trying to do the best job that we can. And whether that means going to Haiti for their disaster relief, sending the Air Force to Japan for humanitarian relief there, anything from that to the conflicts in Libya, the conflict in Afghanistan, like you said, the conflicts in Korea. And So
I have to ask you, though, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, of course, the U.S. is an extremely given country. Whenever there's a natural disaster around the world, a lot of times we are the first people on the ground. But what was the difference between Libya, us trying to help Libya, and we didn't help Egypt, we didn't help Tunisia? There's a lot of other uprising in the Middle East. How did we select that, in your opinion, at least?
I think that the United States is trying to follow Theodore Roosevelt's big stick policy. But if you think about it, we have gone a long way from that time. I don't think the United States should be anywhere near Libya or any part of the Middle East. We have bigger problems in our homeland, and we should take care of those before thinking of helping any country.
But would you believe that if the United States left Libya alone and we isolated ourselves from them, do you believe that there could be greater trouble that would happen where the U.S. would regret itself? That's the point where I come on.
It might be, but we are not required to go help them. If you remember when Saddam Hussein was taken out of Iraq, a war between religious groups started. Saddam Hussein had that kind of in check. And I'm not, saying that a dictatorship is a good way, but at least he had those in check. Once he was out of power, that war broke out, and there was more chaos than it had already been there. So I think that the United States should really concentrate on our problems here before trying to help other countries.
I partially agree with you there. We definitely have to watch ourselves before we're over, even on humanitarian issues. We need to spend more money here at home. There's still poverty here at home. There's still people without health care here at home. And we do need to focus on those types of things, but then again, we can't forget about the rest of the world. We can't just shut ourselves out and stop caring about other nations, because we do have allies out there who do rely on us.
Again, how do we choose on who we're going to help, though? We didn't help Egypt. We didn't help Tunisia. We're not helping Yemen. We didn't even help Rwanda back in the 90s when there was a mass genocide. How do we choose? I mean, I know there's politics involved, but can anybody kind of dig in deep and tell me how do we choose?
I would flat out say, with the way technology is working today and countries possibly holding nuclear power, now this is a bigger idea, I think the United States would be afraid that if an Arab nation possibly had nuclear power and problems got out of hand, then there would be a bigger disaster globally than there would be just in the country.
Thank you guys all. We'll be right back. President Obama was in Latin America this week. He visited Brazil, Chile, and El Salvador. He was able to meet with the leaders of each country. They spoke about job creation and economics. And talking about economics, the Latin American economy grew 6% just last year. In an op-ed for USA Today, President Obama said the trip is designed to help strengthen our economic relationship with neighbors who are playing a growing role in our economic future. Also, while in Chile, First Lady Michelle Obama gave a speech about education. On Monday, Sarah Palin had dinner with Israeli Prime Minister, I should say, Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem. It's part of her overseas trip tour. Some are even saying that she will run in 2012. What do you think? Asa Stackel standing by, and he reports.
Well, Anthony, you are correct. Sarah Palin did leave the United States on Friday for a 5-day international tour, and she did stop in Israel. The highlight of her trip, of the tour, actually, was a trip to the Western Wall, and like you mentioned before, the meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. For the former Alaska governor, the trip offers a chance to distinguish herself as more pro-Israeli than other American politicians. Brian Darling of the Heritage Foundation says of the tour, quote, "This may be the part of the process of rehabilitating her image in the eyes of the American people as somebody who lacks a world vision," unquote. Palin has already pointed out that President Obama has yet to visit Israel during more than 2 years in office. Back to you, Anthony.
All right, thanks a lot, Asa. In Arizona, a divided state Senate voted on a string of proposals that were aimed at denying citizenship rights to children who were born in the U.S., but whose parents weren't. So what do you think? If illegal immigrants come to this country and have children, should their children be considered Americans and benefit all of the rights and everything that comes along with it? Joining me now is Jennifer Arceda, Andrew Metz, and producer of College Nation, Pablo Mendoza. Again, what do you guys think of that? Children or parents who are illegal immigrants brought their children over, and now you have some lawmakers who say their children who were born in the U.S. shouldn't even be considered Americans.
Yes. They should be considered Americans. They were born here. That's the way that citizenship works. It has nothing to do with the parents. Citizenship is where you were born. If you were born in America, you're American. I'm not saying that we should be granting asylum to the parents, but we should definitely. If you're born here, you're an American citizen.
What I find absurd is they're practically blaming the child. Like the unborn child's not going to say.
I don't think they're blaming the child. They're just saying that the child is not an American citizen.
Exactly, but the child doesn't have the decision where it's going to be born or how in any way. Those are the parents' decisions.
Yeah, but that's not the argument. The argument is all about your citizenship.
I think it's wrong for them to take it away because that would, in my case, my parents came from another country and they came here for a better.
Yeah, not everybody gets the chance to come into the United States legally. But if you're born here, you're an American, and there is nothing you can't do with that. The Constitution says it. You're born here, you're an American. You're born in Hawaii,
Supreme Court ruled
you're an
over
American.
100 years ago, and they continue to rule the same ruling. Thank you guys a lot. And since we're, that is the wrong, sorry. All right, so I'm pretty sure you heard of Friday Girl. Her name is Rebecca. She's a YouTube sensation. Watch this.
We'll be right back.
All right, the Trumpster, or Donald Trump, that is, has stated that he might, that is, run for president. He's a great businessman, but could he be a good president? Joining me now is Andrew Metz, Chris Luan, and Asa Stacko. Donald Trump running for president. Where does the world come to? What do you guys think about that?
Come on, he's a business mogul. He's one of the most successful men in multiple industries, and he has the best toupee in the business. So come on.
We haven't seen hair like that since John Adams. So he would make a great candidate for president. He's a self-made billionaire, and he would obviously have excellent fiscal policy. All he's got to do is find a good running mate that will know a lot about national security and foreign policy, and he'll be perfect.
Sarah Palin?
Never thought about that.
Let's not go too far.
What do you think about that?
Well, Andrew, like always, I'm going to have to disagree with you because, as you said,
Donald Trump and Sarah Palin.
He doesn't know about, well, that would just, I'd be 100% against that one. But as you said, he doesn't know about all this different stuff about foreign affairs and stuff. And I know we were talking about this earlier, is if America were to get attacked again, and something were big to happen, I don't think that we could trust Donald Trump in that situation. While he is a great businessman,
that is interesting.
I don't know he could.
I mean, a lot of times those decisions are, they impact so many people, whether it's going to war or doing the smallest things that involve this country. Would you trust Donald Trump to make those commander-in-chief decisions? He's a great businessman. I would give that to him.
He's made it before in business. I mean, what experience do other candidates have? I mean, Barack Obama?
I guess business and politics can kind of go together.
I guess so.
I was going to say,
cutthroat.
Obama, though, was in the Senate, so he knew how it worked, where the Senate votes and everything, get policies done. And Donald Trump probably has an idea of that, but he's never seen it firsthand, so you can't just throw him into the highest office while not having any real experience.
And I was in gym class in high school, so I'm not going to show up expecting to play at a New York Giants game.
All right, we're going to have to leave right there.
No.
What does Donald Trump say again?
You're fired.
Thank you. All right, and that's going to do it for me. I'm Anthony Hill, anchoring live out of the Our Worker television studio. You can catch me here every week at the same time. From the journalists of WTOP News, good night. Stay tuned for our Oswego Sports Update, and it starts right now.